Hello, everybody. I'm here. I made it. Oh my gosh. Hi. Hi, Nina. Hi, Rumi. And War Dove. And Blue. I'm glad to see y'all. Blue and I were just on Discord talking about this, Fem Arha, like, modern AU comic that I found. Um, I found it a while ago and I just was looking at it again and they updated a little bit and all I have to say is that Shumei vapes. That's all you have to know about this comic. I can link it in the Discord if y'all want. But anyway, I got really distracted looking at it because I was like, oh my god, there's an update. Um, but I am very excited for today's stream. Blue cannot believe it because Shimei is the healer, so it's like why would you vape? Why would you do that to yourself? Um which is a good question. It's an Arha Fem like modern AU and um Moran is like kind of a like slacker college student and um Chuaning is like the new professor who's a hard ass. And I really hope they keep updating because it looks amazing. I will definitely share this in Discord. It's this Arha AU comic that I found, and I was just showing it to Blue, and I saw there were updates, and I got very distracted. And then lo and behold, it was time for the stream. Yeah, there is true wanting. Um, so thanks to going over last stream, I'm actually going to be able to finish the book this stream. So I am super excited. And we are on page 295 for chapter 126, which is called Mengzi's Lament. And I said this last time, but I'm very worried about Princess Mengzi right now. So yeah. Princess Mengzi wore robes of pale gold with a cape thrown over top, her thick hair wound in a low bun. As she stepped out of the shadows of the flowers beside the doorway, her handmaiden Yuanyang followed at her heels, carrying a sandalwood box wrapped in golden brocade. Mengzi entered the room, eyes sweeping across the faces of everyone present. Her gaze took in Gumong, insensible beneath the gauze canopy, then finally came to rest on Moshi's bloodless face. You were about to risk yourself again, weren't you? Moshi said nothing. Broken light glimmered in Mengzi's eyes. The last time your heart shattered, it was also because you wanted to redeem this Shishong of yours. He nearly killed you that time. It was I who rescued you, and I asked nothing of you. My only wish was that from then on, no matter what people or situations you encountered, you would first consider whether it was worth your life. The room was terrifyingly silent, save for the sound of Mengzi's low, heartbroken voice. Modaga, so many years have passed. I ask you now, are you going to be just as stubborn as you were back then and make the same choice? Mengzi was of course speaking of the battle at Dongting Lake. Moshi had tried to barter his life for Gumong's return, and been rewarded with a stab through the heart. It was a blow so decisive and final that ever afterward, Moshi felt bitter devastation at the very thought of it. But now that he knew the truth, recalling it once more merely made him feel Gumong had suffered too much. Who do you think you are? You think that if you die, I'll feel guilty and turn back? Don't be a fool. As a general, as a soldier, and as a person, you can't be too attached to past affections. What had Gumong felt when he spoke those words and did those deeds? Moshi closed his eyes. There was no way to explain all this to Mengzi in a short time. The twists and turns were too difficult to follow. His heart was in chaos. He wanted to preserve Gumong's mind, wanted to protect this man covered in bloody wounds, wanted to demand the justice this spy who had immersed himself in evil for a full 5 years deserved. But the Shennong Terrace elder's words echoed unceasingly in his head. Might not remember anything. Might lose the ability to speak. If his mind has fallen apart completely, he might even lose the use of his eyes. The brilliant and gentle black eyes in his memories curved in a smile, twinkling like the reflection of stars on water. They blinked. When they opened again, they had become an azure blue, as if a lake unpolluted by the dust of the mortal world flowed from them. Before he was tempered, Gumong's eyes danced with laughter. Afterward, they gazed at Moshi with quiet obedience. Those eyes called to him, Moshidi, Moshi, my princess, my lord. Moshi's hands were trembling. He didn't respond to Mengzi, but walked straight to Gumong's bedside. Moshi bent to stare fixedly at that face. With the blood wiped away, it was white as bone. After a long silence, he turned to the elder from Shennong Terrace. Continue. Mengzi's eyes finally flashed with anxiety. Moshi, I will explain everything to you afterward, if you only trust me. Mengzi fell quiet. I have to save him. In the silence that followed, it was as if an invisible current churned beneath the surface. Almost everyone believed Mengzi would lash out or explode or break down. But she only went still for a long time and then slowly said, Very well, if this is your choice. Pausing, she stepped forward. Then I will help you. Princess Mengzi. She's too good, she's too good. Princess, Yuanyang exclaimed. Mengzi seemed to be doing her utmost to restrain some emotion. She had always been proficient at enduring hardship in silence, but this time there was no one who couldn't see the hurt and pain filling her eyes. Her lips parted slightly as if to say more, but it seemed she had overestimated her ability to remain stoic. The rims of her eyes reddened before any sound left her mouth. She turned away, eyes downcast. Yuanyang's heart ached for her mistress. Disregarding the lines between master and servant, she wailed, Princess, why are you doing all this? Mengzi closed her eyes, lashes trembling. As she strove to master herself once more, she finally swallowed down that overflowing grief. Her eyes opened. Bring me my medicine chest. Everyone was stunned. Did Murong Mengzi plan to work the healing arts herself after all this time? Chonghua was home to 2 Grand Master healers. The first was Jiang Fuli of the 3 poisons, greed, wrath, and ignorance. The second was Murong Mengzi of the 3 sages, virtue, mind, and wisdom. In order to save Moshi many years ago, Mengzi had overdrawn the power of her spiritual core. There were many spells she could no longer perform on her own. After painstakingly tending to her health for so many years, her body was only just starting to recover. If she used healing magic now, the results were sure to be unparalleled, but she might come out a complete invalid. How could Moshi allow her to make another sacrifice like this? He caught her wrist, stopping her quietly. Mengzi, go home. I already owe you a life. I cannot let him owe you more. Murong Mengzi's slender eyes gradually filled with tears. Perhaps all her waiting and endurance had been too much. This imperial princess, who never let her emotions slip, fell so far as to show red-rimmed, wet eyes before a staring crowd. Modaga, you're so sad when something happens to him. But have you ever thought of me? The crowd had never heard Princess Mengzi express herself so frankly, and for a moment all of them were at a loss. This wasn't something they should see or hear, but they couldn't leave, so they could only stand as still as statues. Mengzi's voice shook. If you come to any more harm, what do you think will happen to me? I can never cultivate the proper path again. Was my life worth so little in your eyes that it couldn't buy you more than a few short years of peace? As she spoke, a tear finally trickled from her eyes, rolling down her luminous cheek and landing on the back of Moshi's hand. This Shuxiang of yours, if he's that important to you, I'd rather use forbidden techniques to bring him back. Modaga, I've done everything I can do. I only ask you to have more consideration for me in the future. Then I could at least... She closed her eyes, fat teardrops falling like beads off a broken string. Moshi's mind was like a bowstring strained to its limit. Gumong's treatment could not be delayed. He urgently needed to ask the Shenong Terrace elder if there was anything else they could try. But here Mengzi was in such a state. Moshi had never known how to deal with women. He was anxious and miserable, at a loss for how to stop her from intervening in this matter. He knew how painful it was to owe a favor he could never repay. He couldn't look upon Mengzi without feeling guilt and self-reproach. Yet this guilt and blame could never be absolved. What Mengzi wanted was something he'd long since given to the man on that bed. He couldn't possibly give it to her. Because of this, he had never known what to say in front of her, or what to do, as if he were bound by invisible strings. There were so many things he would do if Mengzi asked, that he would never do otherwise. Moshi found this lack of agency unbearable. He couldn't let Gumong, too, bear a debt of grace he could never repay. At this moment, the healer who had been maintaining the stability of Gumong's mind coughed up a great mouthful of filthy blood. The magical light array in his hands flickered and failed. "What happened?" the Shenong Terrace elder exclaimed. His condition is too strange. Vicious intent suddenly burst across his mind. This disciple is unskilled and could not withstand it. At that instant, on the bed, Gumong's eyes snapped open, but not because he'd woken up. His eyes were darting side to side, his pupils eerily unfocused, his lips moving as if to lay a curse. Bloody tears streamed from his eyes, flowing along those edges that were slender as phoenix tails. Like the cover of Volume 3? I think he's, like, crying blood on that cover. An inexperienced young healer cried, "What's going on?" "This is the backlash from the black magic curse within his body," Mengzi murmured. She looked up at Moshi. "His mind is breaking down. Already I'm unsure whether I can save him. If the damage isn't brought under control, Modaga, he will die." Moshi's face instantly paled. Mengzi took note of his panic. "If you want to preserve his life, let me help," she offered sadly. After all, in your heart, I'm..." But before she could finish, a voice from outside cut her off. "Princess, why so pessimistic?" That voice was slow and unhurried, carrying a note of innate scorn and arrogance. "That man on the bed is tough as nails. He won't die, and his mind won't break." These words echoed into the room. A man wearing wide-sleeved green robes with a golden pin through his hair sauntered into the room. "I'm here, aren't I?" If these medicine cultivators, who admired skill with healing magic above all, were apprehensive over Princess Mengzi's presence, then this new arrival's entrance left them ready to fall to their knees. "Greetings to Medicine Master Jiang." Mengzi was also stunned. "Medicine Master Jiang." Jiang Fuli's expression was indifferent. His eyes narrowed. This was his distinctive habit. His vision had never been good, probably because he spent too much time counting his money. Without his Liu Li eyepiece, those almond eyes were hazy, as if cloaked in misty Jiangnan rain. Jiang Fuli brandished a golden cowrie note pinned between pale, slender fingertips. He turned to Mo Shi. Was it you who sent the spiritual messenger beast to bring this to me? Your wife said you left for the southern frontier, replied Mo Shi. Yes, but I hadn't gotten far. Besides, when have I ever been unwilling to take money? I rushed back as soon as I saw this. Zhang Fuli flicked that dazzling golden note, glancing at Gumong on the bed. But his condition is dreadful. I'm tripling your fee. Moshi anxiously started. My Shixiong's life. Both his life and his eyes are salvageable. Zhang Fuli paused, then walked forward and tapped Gumong on the forehead. Hard to say if the same applies to his mind, but he won't be left with nothing. I'll have to heal him first to know for sure. Regardless, I will do my best. Zhang Fuli was a heartless man with no moral convictions. The single principle underlying his actions was money, and making more of it. As long as he was paid handsomely, he would spare no effort. Sitting at the edge of the bed, he pulled open Gumong's robes and examined the wounds on his body. He sighed. You spent so much time and only gotten this far? Rank amateurs. The cultivators from Shenong Terrace could only stare in silence. Jiang Fuli extended slender fingers and tapped Gumong's critical acupoints in a few rapid motions, staunching the flow of blood. He lifted a hand and said, "Bring it over." He didn't name what he needed, assuming bystanders would intuit the line of his thoughts. The healer closest to him hastily handed him a medicine chest. Why would I want your little box? Gauze, Zhang Fuli snapped. Pinned by that almond-eyed stare, the cultivator shivered and frantically offered him the gauze he wanted. Zhang Fuli wiped the blood from Gumong's most severe wounds. When he reached Gumong's arm, Zhang Fuli suddenly paused. What is it? Moshi asked at once. The medicine master frowned as he examined a spot on Gumong's arm. This petal-shaped mark. It isn't new. He's had it since he was young. Of course I can see it's not from a recent injury. Zhang Fuli's gaze remained on that mark. It just looks familiar. Why do I feel I've seen one just like this, but on a different patient? I thought it was just on his neck. Or are we talking about a different thing? He hesitated and shook his head. Possibly there were just similarities, and I've misremembered. With that, he tossed the bloodied gauze aside and sat up to begin healing Gumong's wounds with magic. The water clock by the table in the bedroom dripped. A hush fell over the room as Zhang Fuli sat at Gumong's bedside. Two slender fingers hovered at Gumong's wrist, monitoring his pulse while passing spiritual energy into his body. Zhang Fuli's healing spells were distinct from Chonghua's standard treatments. The medicine cultivators around them could barely follow what he was doing. They merely watched as the wounds marring Gumong's flesh re-knit at an astonishing rate, and the bruises on his face faded. Zhang Fuli, the cunning reverser of fate, lives up to his name, Mengzi murmured. The princess flatters me, Zhang Fuli calmly replied. The Shenong Terrace elder edged closer. Medicine Master Jiang, do you need anything? Can we lend a hand? Oh yes, I do need something, said Zhang Fuli. Medicine Master Jiang, only say the word, the elder hastily replied. We are at your command. I need your silence, Zhang Fuli answered. He didn't get his wish. Moments later, a servant dashed in as if flames were licking at his heels, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Bad news! Bad news!" Moshi turned. What is it this time? "Bad news!" The servant cried again. "My lord, Housekeeper Li can't stall them any longer. Eunuch Zhao is furious. He says if my lord refuses to respect the imperial edict and meet him, his people will charge in and escort you to the palace." Great. Oh, great. Oh. What? It was on a spot in Gumong's arm, so it's not the magical blood tattoo. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder what that is. Also, that's the end of the chapter. And, great. Awesome. Who is the friend that asked the butcher to scramble Gumong's memory? I don't... Wait, do we know that one? I don't know. And I don't know if we know that one. Rumi, yes, we are going to finish today. We're on page 305 for chapter 127, which is called Confrontation. Li Wei stood beneath Shiha Manor's plaque in the middle of the main entrance, arms crossed and hands tucked into opposite sleeves. His eyes were fixed on the ground. Behind him were the manor's great doors, heavily secured, and before him was the stone residence pillar conferred by the previous emperor, engraved in lesser seal script with the glorious merits of 4 generations of Mo clan heroes. Housekeeper Li, this is an act of rebellion. Does Shiha Manor choose to defy the imperial edict? What are you saying, Eunuch Zhao? Haven't I already explained? Shiha Jun is indisposed. He can't come out to receive the imperial edict. Once his condition improves, I'll report the imperial order. You mustn't get angry. You'll make yourself sick. Eunuch Zhao was seething with rage. Jabbing a finger toward Housekeeper Li's nose, he snapped, "Li Wei, do your lies know no bounds? The news of Shiha Jun's trespass into Sishu Terrace has already spread through the heavens. He stole that goo trader from Elder Zhou himself, and now you stand out here saying he's unwell. Who are you trying to fool?" Li Wei rubbed his nose and sighed. "It's a long story. I'm afraid there have been several misunderstandings." What misunderstandings could there be? This night, Shenong Terrace has gone in, Princess Mengzi has gone in, Jiang Fuli has gone in. Shiha Jun can receive all of these people, but the mouthpiece of the emperor is kept outside. What nonsense is this? Li Wei clapped his hands together. "Ayo, you're right. Then you've noticed. Everyone who went in is a healer, and all of them are here to treat the Lord. The Lord is very gravely ill. You!" A creak interrupted their argument as the manor doors opened. Moshi stood framed within the great doors. In the moonlight, his eyes were sharp, undulled by his exhaustion. Li Wei had deflected these messengers for as long as humanly possible. Upon seeing Moshi emerge, he heaved a great sigh of relief and hastily darted out of the way. He lowered his head. "My lord." Moshi stepped over the threshold, his voice low, unhurried, and intense. "You've done well. You may withdraw." "Understood." After Li Wei left, Moshi strode out. His gaze swept down the manor steps and landed on Eunuch Zhao. Even as the emperor's closest, most trusted servant, Eunuch Zhao was not immune to the pressures of hierarchy and status. Plus, Moshi naturally possessed a glacial aura. When he wasn't speaking or smiling, the iciness he exuded intimidated all around him. Eunuch Zhao's earlier boldness shrank to nothing. He lowered his head and performed his obeisance. "Shiha Jun." Moshi didn't speak. He turned his face up to the starry night sky, eyes flashing with an indescribable light. His Imperial Majesty asks you, how is His Imperial Majesty's health? Eunuch Zhao was stunned. He had imagined all sorts of reactions: acceptance, fury, defiance, but he was strangled into silence by this question out of the blue. Mengzi said his illness flared up these past few days. How is he now? Shihajun's consideration is appreciated. His Imperial Majesty is naturally protected by the heavens and has mostly recovered. All right, that's good. Moshi's steel-toed military boots clicked over the stone. He descended the stairs and said lightly, "Lead the way." They arrived at Zhuque Hall in the depths of the Imperial Palace, the warmest place in the entire compound. This Imperial Hall wasn't large, but it was built entirely of volcanic rock from the far south. Warming incense spiraled through the air, and the floor was covered in thick woolen rugs. The Emperor always came here to rest and recuperate when his illness plagued him. Moshi followed Eunuch Zhao to the hall's entrance. Eunuch Zhao went in to make his report, then returned with his horsetail whisk in the crook of one arm. He bowed to Moshi. "Shihajun, His Imperial Majesty invites you in." He strode through the hall doors. Moshi had never liked this place. The rugs here were too thick. His feet sank deep into the soft pile whenever he came here, like a wild beast trapped in mud, or a moth stuck in a spider's web. That feeling of helplessness crept up his spine, lingering in spite of the luxurious scents suffusing the room. I love that description of sinking into the rug and it's like a trap. Oh, so good. Eunuch Zhao closed the doors behind him. The bejeweled Zhuque Hall was filled with a heavy fragrance, as if the air itself had grown dense and solid. The weather had warmed in the last few weeks, but a coal... I think I've been saying this wrong. Brazier? But a coal brazier blazed fiercely in the middle of the hall. The Emperor reclined on a couch of ebony sandalwood. He was wrapped in thick fox fur, his lashes lowered as he fiddled with a bracelet of beads carved of Bodhi wood. His complexion was pale and wan. Even the fire's light, gilding his features, put no warmth on his face. At the sound of Moshi's muffled steps, the Emperor let his fingers fall from the beads. He spoke with a sigh thinner than paper. "Shihajun, you're here." Moshi said nothing. To be honest, he'd felt an overflowing rage since the moment he learned the truth. He'd wanted to run off to the palace to question the Emperor at once. But Gumong was still in jeopardy, so he couldn't very well leave. Only after Zhang Fuli rushed over and successfully stabilized Gumong could he finally come to the palace and face this man who had known the truth all along. Now that he was actually standing before the Emperor, his rage was not as sharp and volatile as it had been in the beginning, but it was deeper. He suppressed his own fury with great difficulty as he stared at that ruler wrapped in fox fur. "We requested your presence tonight over a small matter," the Emperor began. "Zhou He related quite a strange story to us, and we felt that it should be shared with Shihajun. Would Shihajun like to hear it?" Moshi made no move to answer, so the Emperor continued. "Zhou He said he was conducting the black magic experiments as we ordered tonight. In the middle of an important trial, someone burst in, disregarding all reason and defying imperial orders, and insisted on taking the test subject away. They even went so far as to flout the law and summon a holy weapon, coming just short of shedding the blood of our own Sishu Terrace's cultivators. Does Shihajun feel that this thief must be a wicked, evil villain?" The Emperor spun one of the beads on his wrist and burst into laughter. "So did we, until Zhou He said that this hero who had come to the rescue." He paused, slowly looking up. His face was lined with fatigue, but those eyes were cold and sharp. was you. These two words seemed to have been pushed through bared teeth. The Emperor sat up straight, his brows stark over the dark shadows of his eyes. Emperor and subject gazed at one another over the blazing coal brazier. Brazier. I'm going to keep forgetting how to say that. Over the rising heat and smoke. Their images reflected in each other's eyes were hazy and distorted. The Emperor's voice was dark. Shihajun, you've disappointed us deeply. We ask you, when we handed Gumong to you, what did we say? Moshi remained silent. We warned you that, in light of the great crimes Gumong has committed, he ought to have gone to the executioner's block long ago. We kept him alive solely because the Liao Kingdom techniques written into his body were worthy of further study. That there would come a day when he would be taken for such study, and on that day, we hoped you would not forget who you are and take the wrong side on impulse. These had indeed been the Emperor's words. Back then, Moshi had only felt suffocated. Hearing them for the second time now, he found them absurdly mocking and terrifying. Moshi studied the Emperor's face, seeking the slightest hint of guilt, sadness, or hesitation. But there was none. The mask he wore was exquisite. Every line and angle of emotion seemed to have been measured 100 times before it was portrayed. There was not the merest waver in his eyes. Hardest to read was the heart of the king. When had the saying been wrong? Moshi closed his eyes. Coldness and rage, disappointment and sorrow filled the veins that flowed through his body. But the Emperor's words stabbed into his eardrums like scorpion venom. Shihajun, as we see it, you've gone blind. You've discounted all the warnings we gave you. You've forgotten you are the top general of Chonghua, and forgotten who stabbed you in the heart. You've forgotten who rescued you and gave you a second chance at life, forgotten who killed tens of thousands of our nation's people. You've entirely forgotten who the traitor is, haven't you? A piece of prickly ash burst inside the brazier with a crackle, and a trail of bright sparks flew up, dancing in the air. Moshi opened his eyes. He held back his fury, so intense it threatened to overwhelm him. He endured the trembling of his hands, so enraged they were shaking, pushing down his fiery anger that surged like lava. He spoke, voice low. Is your Imperial Majesty done? The Emperor stilled. He stared dark-eyed into Moshi's face. He'd finally realized the state Moshi was in. Looking at him more closely, he found that even his spiritual flow was fluctuating wildly. Could it be? The Emperor was filled with an extreme unease, unconsciously tightening his grip on the... Okay, I thought this was Deedze. I think it's Z? On the Z bead bracelet. The last bit of color in his face faded. In this fraught moment between ruler and subject, it seemed as if everything had been laid bare. If so, then I too have a strange tale. I'm not sure if your Imperial Majesty dares listen to it. After a long while, the Emperor reclined deep into the couch. He had already guessed what Moshi was about to say. There was only one thing that could change his mind so suddenly and resolutely. That last layer of paper between them shuddered, waiting to be punctured. Moshi's eyes never left the Emperor's, pausing between each word as he tore through that paper screen. Many years ago, there was someone I knew. That man performed outstanding military achievements for the nation, fighting for years on end, and only ever recording a single loss. Later, For the price of 70,000 gravestones, for the equal world his emperor promised him, he went deep into the enemy's ranks, suffering a mission in unceasing torment for a full 5 years. In those 5 years, not a single day passed when he didn't rue the blood he spilled, when he didn't hope for his emperor to show him that old promise fulfilled. The emperor's face paled with every word he spoke. Each one was like a sharp knife, piercing that flawless mask, shredding his many falsehoods into tattered scraps. Each and every word Moshi set down before the emperor was soaked in glaring scarlet. In the end, this man returned to his nation, but lost his memories. Other than the emperor he'd once entrusted with his life, no one knew he wasn't guilty. He was universally reviled, debased, and imprisoned. The nation hated him, blamed him, humiliated him, wished for his death. And his emperor, who had once promised him that he would one day be exonerated, that he would be bestowed that blue gold ribbon of heroes, said he was only left alive as fodder for black magic experiments. Explosive fury ignited Moshi's eyes. No matter how he tried to suppress it, by now his voice was quaking. His black eyes seemed to spark with flame. Your Imperial Majesty, I'm not sure you're familiar with this story. The Emperor's face was whiter than paper. In this dangerous silence, he tried to put the bracelet back onto his wrist. His hand was trembling slightly, and he didn't succeed on the first try. Only on the second attempt did he wrap the beads properly. Moshi, the Emperor, looked up. What nerve you have. You dared trespass into the Imperial Censorate to steal the history recording Jade Scrolls. So, Moshi closed his eyes, his voice shaking from rage. You were the one who destroyed them. His eyes snapped open. The Emperor had never seen such anguish and frigid cold in those pupils. It chilled him to the bone. The Emperor was of an age with Moshi. They had essentially grown up together. He knew too well the character of this youthful commander of the Empire. His father had once said, "The Mo bloodline is loyal, strong, brave, stubborn, and tenacious. They are ruled by absolute principle. They will never covet your throne, nor will they do anything to oppose you without real cause. But if a day comes when he believes something you've done violates the tenets he believes in, he will stand against you, with no fear of death nor thought for reputation. He will become the sharpest needle in your eye and the most painful thorn in your flesh." He had never forgotten his father's words for a single moment. In all matters regarding Moshi, he had ever been cautious and prudent, but Moshi had still ended up on the opposing side. Moshi spoke, voice resounding through the hall. Your Imperial Majesty, he's done so much for you, yet you insist on hiding the truth? For a moment, Ju Chue Hall was terrifyingly quiet. The twisting Jiao dragons carved onto the roof beams seemed to come alive, staring with sharp claws outstretched at the confrontation below. After a lengthy silence, the Emperor spoke. He could no longer evade nor conceal the truth. He looked up and asked softly, "And if I do?" That's the end of that chapter. Rumi, I haven't actually seen Liu Yuning as an actor in like any shows, but I've seen like some pictures and gifs, and I can see the vision, even though I understand why you don't want him to be that character. um, but Henry, you also make a good point. Like evil roles are fun. I don't know. Um, I don't know how Moshi is getting out of his, pact with the Emperor. And I'm sure that Meat Bun is gonna drag that out for a while, but that's like my biggest concern when they have a disagreement. Rumi, I have to watch A Journey to Love. Okay, I do need to check that out. So I'm gonna read one more chapter and then we're gonna have a break. We are on page 315 for chapter 128, which is called No Other Choice. The warm room was suddenly filled with a piercing cold. The Emperor leaned back deep into the couch, looking down at Moshi. He wrapped the fox fur more tightly around himself and slowly said, "The past is the past. There is no reason whatsoever for us to keep these records. Shihajun, let me ask you. These jade scrolls you risked your life to repair, can they strengthen our nation or bring security and happiness to the people? Can they bring down the Liao kingdom or guarantee peace in the 9 provinces?" The Emperor paused. "They cannot." He continued, "Preserving those scrolls would only cause unnecessary confusion and discontent. It would only cause... See, it would only cause what has come to pass today, an emperor and his subject at odds. Do you recall the stone plaque erected at the door of the Imperial Censorate? It says, 'The past is dead.' These 4 words are quite correct. Some events, some secrets ought to be buried by the passage of time. If they are unearthed, they stand to harm the present in 100 different ways without conferring the slightest benefit." After a few beats of silence, the Emperor said blandly, "We didn't expect you would find it so hard to accept." Moshi's eyes were shot through with scarlet. Lava seemed to roil in his chest. Blood rushed into his head. His fingers curled into fists, and his voice was dreadfully hoarse. "It's not that I can't accept it, but rather, your Imperial Majesty, it's that you have accepted it far too easily." He pressed on. 8 years ago on that stormy night upon the Golden Terrace, you promised Gumong everything he wanted. You used every pretty phrase at your disposal. You said you'd never thought of him and his men as insignificant beasts. You said you would shape for them a world where everyone is treated equally. That there would come a day when you would personally bestow the martyr's ribbon upon him. All these guarantees you gave to him, all the promises you made, were they no more than schemes and lies? Shihajun. The Emperor's gaze was like solid ice. The bridge of his nose wrinkled slightly, his stare growing predatory. "You forget yourself." "What have I forgotten?" Moshi retorted. "I merely want right to be right and wrong to be wrong. I merely want him to receive the respect he deserves, instead of more false accusations. It's been 8 years. The secret festered in his heart for 8 years, yet even during the worst of his suffering, he never betrayed you or revealed the slightest hint of the truth. Now he's been hollowed out, he can't serve you anymore. Is it really so hard for you to return him the innocence he deserves? You led him down a dead-end road, then washed your hands of him. Your Imperial Majesty, he was your chess piece before. So who is your pawn now? Me?" The Emperor rose to his feet, upending the table with an explosive crash. Fruit and cakes rolled over the floor. The bean cakes were crushed, the grapes destroyed, their juices pooling on the ground. Redness rushed into his face. "Moshi, we're warning you. Do not forget the oath you have sworn." He had blurted this out in shock and in desperation. Regret came instantaneously. Light flashed in Moshi's eyes. He put a hand to his brow and tilted his face to the sky, shoulders shaking with self-mocking laughter as he murmured, "The vow of calamity. 10 years of my life I give to make this oath of blood. From now on, slave cultivators will never take up arms and rebel, nor will I take up arms and rebel. I pledge my loyalty to your Imperial Majesty and to Chonghua with my life." The memory of helplessly swearing the blood oath and lowering himself to the ground in a long kowtow was vivid in his mind. Moshi swallowed thickly and closed his wet eyes. What a colossal joke, he murmured. He was still for a moment, with an arm over his eyes, striving to harness his own emotions, but it was futile. At that moment, his teeth-gnashing hatred was plainly engraved on his thin face. He lowered his arm. When those black eyes opened once more, they were bright with a knife-like chill. The Emperor tensed and instinctively flung up a hand in defense. But Moshi's wrathful outburst, even with his core damaged, was more powerful than he'd imagined. With a crackle, the snake whip Shuai-Ran appeared in his hand and viciously struck the barrier the Emperor had created. The whip's scarlet light tore through the air, transforming into a razor-sharp sword that came to a stop a hair's breadth from the Emperor's throat. The Emperor blanched. Shihajun, make a move against us and you will disperse as ashes on the wind and die without an intact corpse. Moshi's eyes were blood red. He stepped forward, holding the sword level, teeth gritted and voice dark. You don't need to remind me. Your Imperial Majesty, back then, you already knew. You had already made up your mind not to touch Gumong's surviving soldiers, but you still had to get another reassurance from me. Yeah. That's it. We got art. I didn't think we were gonna get an actual physical fight with them right now. Shihajun, you used the same chip twice. First, to secure his undying devotion, and second, to ensure my eternal loyalty. Two birds with one stone. I would expect nothing less of your Imperial Majesty. An excellent ploy. The Emperor turned his face aside. We couldn't explain it to you then. Recall that we'd been evading you the entire time. But you knelt before our hall for 3 days and 3 nights. He whipped around to face Moshi, the glare of the sword illuminating his face with a malevolent light. 3 days and 3 nights. What could we do? Send you away? Refuse to see you? Shihajun, take a moment to think about us. All the thousands of eyes of the court are fixed upon us. Think what you would have done if we told you the truth. Could you have merely looked on as that dear Shixiong of yours went to suffer for so many years in the Liao Kingdom and endured so many years of disgrace? You couldn't. At this point, the Emperor's eyes, too, were bloodshot from rage and obstinance. He stared at Moshi, and his voice shook. With everything you've done, when haven't you forced our hand? Do you think we wanted this? Do you think, after all of it, we could really feel no guilt and sleep in peace? If your Imperial Majesty felt so guilty, how could you do something as cruel as what you did today? Moshi furiously shot back. What choice did we have? The Emperor stared at him through scarlet eyes. He pointed behind him at his own throne. Why don't you sit there and see what it's like? There is much we cannot control. If you haven't sat there, you can't see any of the threats that lurk around us. He panted. Do you think we don't want to clear his name? Do you think we don't want to see our god of war ride armored once more onto the battlefield? Do you think we don't want to take his hand and tell the entirety of Chonghua? His faith never wavered. Their General Gu is still their General Gu. A loyal heart forever true. Do you really think we don't want that? As the Emperor spat out those last words, he began to choke up. I'll tell you the truth. Every day and every night, even in my dreams, I yearn for the day. The emperor turned, fighting an agitation unseemly for a nation's ruler as he turned his face away. Finally, he calmed himself enough to resume using the royal we. But we can't do it. The root system sustaining Chonghua's old nobles is as strong as it ever was. The situation with slave cultivators has improved, but not enough, and the Liao kingdom still threatens our nation's borders at every turn. In the matter of black magic curses, Chonghua is still in the dark. We can only react to them. How do you propose we clear General Gu's name? Do you want us to announce to the world that Gumong was actually a spy we sent into the Liao kingdom? Or explain nothing and exempt him from punishment by fiat? The emperor laughed bitterly. Shihajun, wake up. There is too much blood on Gumong's hands. The latter is impossible. And if you would just consider it calmly, you could guess the results of the former. Yes, the stain on his reputation would be washed clean. But what next? The Liao kingdom would know Gumong had relayed the most closely guarded secrets of their magic to Chonghua, and fortify their defenses accordingly. The old nobles would learn of the arrangement we made with General Gu back then, and grow uneasy and restless. Internal troubles and external threats would combine to render General Gu's 5 years of spying, 3 years of humiliation, all his suffering, everything he sacrificed, it would be wasted. The emperor paused, his eyes flashing as he turned to Moshi. This is not what he wanted. Shihajun, you are the person he treasures most. You should understand his choice. The long sword in Moshi's hand quivered with the trembling of his heart. How could he not understand? Gumong had spoken to him of his dream countless times. In the beginning, he was so timid, as if terrified his companions would mock the naivete of his ideals. Later, he'd spoken resolutely, decisively. At that time, Gumong had already chosen to follow this principle to its end, and would never turn back from his aim. How could Moshi not understand the choice he made? From the moment he saw Gumong kneel on the golden terrace, he knew what kind of path Gumong had laid out in his heart. But when he thought of that blood-soaked man in Sishu Terrace tonight, thought of the man who fell into his arms, tears streaming down his face as he begged not to have his memories stripped away, how could he accept it? Torn in 1,000 directions, Moshi felt like he was burning alive. He felt like his body had been cleaved into two. Half his heart ached for the suffering Gumong had endured and clamored for him to give up. What righteousness and loyalty to the nation and the world? How could there be equal treatment for all with peace throughout the land? His Shixiong was far too naive. The world would never give him anything, yet he still offered up his chest full of passion, his pristine reputation, and his body of flesh and blood. Moshi, when his mind was collapsing, he begged you so pitifully. He's afraid of pain. How could you not save him? The other half of his heart murmured, no. Ever since he was young, Gumong had hungered for a world where all were equal. His Shixiong had walked this path for so many years, covering his body with blood and filling his eyes with wounds, just for the realization of that day. If he were awake, with how stubborn he is, he would definitely want to persevere. Moshi, how could you betray him? The two halves of his heart battled, locked in mutual torment. His spiritual core was nearing collapse, though the elder of Shenong Terrace had done all in his power to stabilize it. It was still dangerously weak. Now, as his emotions surged, his jeopardized core throbbed with a pain so violent he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Upon seeing his condition, the emperor relaxed slightly. Shihajun. With a turn of his wrist, Moshi flipped the Shuairan longsword down to prop himself up. The blade's sharp point sank into the golden brick below. He panted, wiping blood from the corner of his mouth, and rasped through lips and teeth stained scarlet. Even if You can't clear his name right now. Then let me ask you. He blinked laboriously, tendons protruding in his neck and his hands tightly clenched, each word bitten out. Why do these black magic experiments? That sentence landed like a stone in the sea, sinking into silence. Moshi looked up, staring at the Emperor's pallid face through furious and grieving eyes. His blood-stained lips moved slowly, and the words he spat were equally raw. Even if you were bound by circumstance and couldn't ensure his safety, as the ruler of the nation, could you not at least spare him some suffering after he returned? Moshi's voice cracked like a shattered shun. The rims of his eyes were alarmingly red. Black magic experiments are excruciatingly painful. Your Imperial Majesty, what are you doing this for? Putting on a show? Performing blood-for-blood vengeance for those who don't know the truth? Or was it because you wanted to learn more secrets of black magic curses? Which is what I thought. Oh, Rumi. Maybe it's to find a cure for his cold illness? That could be a thing. The Emperor's face was ashen. He parted his lips to speak, but stopped himself. In the end, he bit his lower lip and turned his face away. Shihajun, there are many things you don't understand. There are indeed many things I don't understand. I don't understand what you've been thinking all these years. I don't know which of the things you've said are true, and which are false. It's precisely because I don't know anything that I was kept in the dark for a full 8 years. But, Your Imperial Majesty, do you think you know all the truth? Light flickered in the Emperor's eyes. What do you mean? He slowly asked. Caught in the grip of his surging emotions, another burst of coppery bitterness filled Moshi's throat. He closed his eyes, tilting his head slightly without answering. At that moment, those two little golden beasts on the brazier of Jutue Hall awoke. They inhaled smoke into their bellies, then hiccuped, raising their voices to shout. His Imperial Majesty's fortune floods the heavens. His Imperial Majesty's might covers the world. Moshi silently listened to these two magic-imbued beasts, belching flattery and praise. He began to laugh, the sound filled with endless sorrow. The Emperor's expression strained tighter. What about subject Gu do we not know? Moshi didn't answer him directly. Your Imperial Majesty, Murong Lian gifted you this brazier and incense burner to demonstrate his allegiance and give you peace of mind. Countless people bend their knee and praise you for the sake of their own titles and status, for their lives or the lives of their families. If you wanted to find someone in Chonghua whose heart is truly steady, immovable in its loyalty to Chonghua, there are actually very, very few. Gumong is one of them. Because of your many difficulties, you did not make good on your promise, but he is not the same. The things he promised you were sworn with a gentleman's word. He achieved all of them. As Moshi spoke, he smiled softly. That smile held a boundless, aching sadness. Your Imperial Majesty, what you don't know is that Gumong recovered most of his memories while we were on Bat Island. Distant light flickered in the Emperor's eyes. After a moment of blankness, shock followed. He did? Moshi's eyes were almost cruel as he took in the Emperor's rattled expression. He cut into his ruler's heart with every word he spoke. Aside from those 5 years he spent in the Liao Kingdom, he more or less remembered everything. He remembered the promises you made him, the kind of person he is, Lu Jianxing's death, the defeat at Phoenix Cry Mountain, everything you said on the Golden Terrace. He remembered it all. The Emperor's cheeks were bloodless. He shook his head, murmuring as he took a step backward. His face was blank, as if he hadn't realized the implications of those words, but he was trembling all over as if he understood completely. How could that be? He took another step back, looking at Moshi in disbelief. But his eyes were empty, as though whatever convictions had supported his cruelty had collapsed to pieces. A crack had appeared across the Emperor's usually indifferent expression, and increasingly vivid emotions began pouring from the split. The Emperor shook his head again and again, his voice rising until it sounded almost wild. How could he possibly have remembered? If he really remembered everything, then wouldn't it be? Moshi blinked back his tears. He knew the truth. He knew you had forsaken him, yet he continued to keep your secret. 8 years have passed. He's seen his reputation destroyed and his body covered in wounds. He's received none of what you promised him, but he still kept the secret for you. He didn't come to question you, nor did he confess his grievances to any other. When Zhou He cut him open to carry out the black magic experiments you ordered, his mind was clear. Moshi steadied his shaking voice, but his vision blurred. Your Imperial Majesty, do you understand now? When he went with Zhou He, he knew he was innocent. The Emperor collapsed back down into his throne. His lips were nearly blue, as if his illness might flare up again at any moment. He knew. He already knew. Then at that time, the Emperor stumbled over his words. He lifted slender fingers to bury his face into his hands, murmuring in hoarse fragments, Subject Gu. Subject Gu. Despite knowing he had been discarded, he had walked silently into the Asura room. What had he felt? The Emperor closed his eyes in grief, his voice catching in his throat and turning into a sorrowful gulp. The shock of this truth was too much for him. For a long, long time, the Emperor could not recover. He mumbled to himself, the rims of his eyes overflowing and his palms filling with tears. His head was down, his shoulders crumpled pathetically, his neck bent as if an invisible claw had broken it. In all the years Moshi had known him, he had never seen the Emperor like this. The man sat sunken into the soft middle of the throne as the minutes ticked past. He stared vacantly at that glowing brazier, watching the firewood crackle within. His eyes were empty when he spoke. Defeated. Moshi. He was met with silence. Do you think we have a heart of stone? That after making use of Subject Gu, we carelessly abandoned him without any feeling or the slightest intention of keeping our promises? The Emperor looked up, the rims of his eyes and the tip of his nose still red. He closed his eyes. Amid this silence, he seemed to make some decision. He rose to his feet. There is nothing we can say that you will believe. And so it is. To be honest, of those history-recording jade scrolls, one yet remains. We have always kept it at our side. Moshi tensed. When the Emperor next spoke, it was with an air of heavy weariness. Since it's come to this, we have nothing left to hide. We ask you to come with us. That's the end of that chapter. I'm gonna take a break for 5 to 10 minutes. And, I'm so curious why that affected the Emperor so much emotionally. Because when his emotions are coming through and he's not covering them up, I don't think he's, like, faking. So I'm like, why did Gumong remembering things affect him? Or is he just, like, scared for himself? And that's why? But very intriguing. When we come back, we'll be on page 327 for chapter 129, which is called The Truth of Warrior Soul Mountain. I cannot wait to find out what the remaining Jade Scroll is. I'm so curious. Alright. I will be right back. Hello, I'm back. And I'm sorry I didn't see the messages at first, but Rumi, you wanted to see my water bottle. So, um, there's kind there's kind of a lot of text on here. Um, and wait, okay. Yeah. I got the little Wangshan bunnies over here. Um, I just have a problem with stickers, and then I'm like, what am I gonna put them on? And for some reason my first thought is like just water, just sticker the heck out of water bottles. So there you go. uh, Thank you, Henry. It is the most ADHD water bottle. So yeah, rooming, exactly. That's at least what I tell myself. So we are on page 327. This is chapter 129. The Truth of Warrior Soul Mountain. I think there's this in one more chapter. I think we only have 2 chapters left. Thank you, Tina. So, yeah, we're almost done with this book and I'm not scared at all. Nope, not me. The Emperor led Moshi to a back courtyard terrace of Ju-Tue Hall. A pool of dream-gathering water lay there, which could gather the past into the present and bring it in front of the viewer's eyes. The Emperor stood motionless beside the pool, watching the reflections of himself and Moshi within. Then he slowly took that string of Bodhi-zi beads off his wrist and passed it through his hands. The Bodhi beads had been polished by time. He moved his fingers over each one and stopped at the 7th. Moshi, we might have chosen to destroy the Jade Scrolls in the Imperial Censorate, but... He closed his eyes, wringing his hands. But believe us, we never thought of lying to Subject Gu. We've always kept this Z bead that can clear his name with us. In the event we achieved what we promised during our lifetime, we of course intended to publicly announce his innocence. But if we were defeated by fate, we would have ensured this Z bead containing the truth remained on this earth. When the time came, there would be descendants who would reveal that oath on the Golden Terrace to the realm. The night wind rose, rustling through the leaves of the parasol trees at the pool's edge. In this way, under the 9 springs, we would at last be worthy of seeing our loyal subject again. As he spoke, he tapped that Z bead with the fingertip. The bead shone with dazzling light as a wisp of silver-white memory floated from it and fell into the dream-transfiguring pool. The water rippled, shattering the frosty moonlit reflection as a cold mist rose from its surface. The mist coalesced into a vision. Faint sounds emanated from the depths of the fog. Gradually, they became crystal clear. A brothel echoing with the voices of women unfolded before their eyes. The fragrance of blackberry rose on the wind, cuckoo song and red flowers filling the trees. An empty happiness, only wishing the one I long for thinks the same. There's a footnote from Spring Evening by the Yuan Dynasty poet Li Ji Yuan. The sound of the paired stanza water fairy music came hazily from the stage in the brothel, the songstress's tremulous voice drifting through the pleasure house like a floating skein of silk. There's another footnote for water fairy, a type Paired stanza water fairy, a type of poem with a rigid rhyming scheme, originating in the Tang Dynasty. The hazy shadow of flowers at dusk. The daylily flourishes without mercy. The pomegranate blossoms deep in yearning. Heavy is the ache of farewell. The fog rising from the pool grew denser, enclosing the entirety of the terrace at the back of Ju Tue Hall in a sensual illusion. Apricot Mansion. Moshi and the Emperor stood amid that thick fog. Slowly, the scene came into focus. Moshi saw once more that night from 8 years ago he had seen in the time mirror, the eve of Gumong's defection. In a side room of the brothel, Gumong was speaking with that mysterious black-garbed man. He hadn't known who the black-garbed man was back then. In hindsight, it seemed it was none other than the Emperor himself. Oh. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Blue, time for Meat Bun's Magical TV. The Emperor walked to Moshi's side, eyes on that black-garbed man who had materialized from the mist. This was the last meeting we had with Subject Gu before his defection. At the time, he knew he was soon to leave. He was distraught, so we agreed to come find him that day at midnight to take him to see something on Warrior Soul Mountain. The conversation they watched was identical to the one in the time mirror. In the illusory realm, the black-robed Emperor pushed a bundle toward Gumong and set it on the table. I brought this for you. You should change into it. Gumong's actions were exactly the same. He lifted a hand, turning down a center of the cloth, only to quickly wrap it back up. What do you mean by this? If you're going there, you'd best prepare, hadn't you? The Emperor said. If I tell you what's there, I doubt you'll believe it. Tonight, I'll take you there in person, so you can see the truth with your own eyes. The scene around them darkened. When it lit up once more, the thick fog around them had become the foot of Warrior Soul Mountain. Both Gumong and the Emperor wore black hooded capes, thoroughly covered from head to toe. When Gumong reached the start of the curved footpath, he looked at the little cobblestone road snaking upward and lowered his hood, gazing at that lofty mountain path. Are you not going? Asked the Emperor. Just thinking about how I'll be leaving soon, and my hands will be stained with the blood of Chonghua's soldiers. The Emperor cut him off. Chonghua's current state is as you've seen. You experienced it yourself after Phoenix Cry Mountain. When you and your army fell from grace, all you found were those who would kick you when you were down, none who would offer help in your hour of need. Seeing Gumong about to protest, he continued, You don't need to tell me that if Shiha Jun were here, he would side with you. His support is useless. You are a clever person. You understand that Chonghua has always been ruled by the nobles. You cannot change anything with your power alone. Gumong said nothing. It's come to this, the Emperor said. The pieces are already in place for your treason. This move cannot be taken back. He lifted a hand in the cold mist, taking hold of Gumong's icy fingers. Gumong turned to look at him in surprise, twitching slightly as if he wanted to break free. But in the end, he did not. Moshi watched it all unfold in front of him. The first time he'd seen this piece of the past in the time mirror, he thought this black-garbed man was Liao Kingdom agent, and that Gumong's trembling upon having his hand caught was from hesitation and indecision. Knowing the truth, his emotions were incredibly complicated. The first coherent sentence that came to mind was, Were they cold? The Emperor, standing at his side, was taken aback. What? His hands, Moshi whispered. Were they very cold? This was something that had happened 8 years in the past. No one would remember such details for that long. But after a moment of blankness, the Emperor understood. He lowered his lashes. Yes. Moshi didn't reply. I'm sorry. We pushed him onto this road of despair. Moshi made no sound as the Emperor in the illusion repeated just what he'd said in the time mirror. General Gu, none who seek to blaze a new path have hands unsullied by blood. Before you have a single innocent life on your hands, you should walk up Warrior Soul Mountain one more time. You won't have the chance to do so in the future. Gumong closed his eyes. The night wind tousled the wisps of his hair at his temples. It was a long time before he gently pulled his hand from between the Emperor's palms. His fingertips still tremored. No one could warm those hands of his. Let's go. In the time mirror, this was as far as Moshi had seen. But this vision was different. This time, dense fog unfurled, and he finally beheld what Gumong and the Emperor had gone to Warrior Soul Mountain to see. The Emperor and Gumong arrived before the barrier that guarded the forbidden area of Warrior Soul Mountain. Raising a hand, the Emperor cut his own palm, smearing fresh blood onto the array. The blood was instantly absorbed by the magical barrier, and a voice seemed to rumble out from the depths of the earth. Courageous achievements immortalized in stone. The Emperor answered, graves of commoner heroes carved with names. Courageous achievements immortalized in stone, graves of commoner heroes carved with names. This simple paired verse was the dream Gumong had held dear all his life. As soon as he heard this reply, the rims of Gumong's eyes reddened. The Emperor, taking note, sighed and patted Gumong on the shoulder. There's no one else here, he said softly. You may take off your cloak. Gumong unfastened the ties and let the cloak fall. Beneath was a set of white military mourning robes, trimmed in black. Let's go. They passed through the barrier and entered the forbidden area of Warrior Soul Mountain. Moshi already had an inkling of what awaited them and thought himself ready. But when he laid eyes on the scene within, he felt his heart had been struck a heavy blow. The entire forbidden area of Warrior Soul Mountain, fully half of the slope, was covered in neat rows of gravestones. Of those plaques, some were already carved with names, traced over with fine golden lacquer, while some were still blank. Seeing the vast expanse of them grouped together, it was as if those common-born heroes' souls had returned from the underworld, crowding around the peak in a noisy bustle. Gumong stood stunned for a long interval. Then, as though afraid of shattering this beautiful dream, he took a few careful steps forward. Slowly, his cautious movements became staggering stumbles, and he lurched forward, ever closer. By the time he saw the engraved words on the first tombstone, tears had overspilled the rims of his eyes. He reached out, caressing the gleaming gold inscription on the stone, tears flowing freely. You've come home. Choked sobs escaped his throat as he knelt. In grief, he huddled in front of that incomplete field of tombstones, kowtowing again and again to those 70,000 comrades he left behind at Phoenix Cry Mountain. You've come home. The Emperor stood at his side. After a long while, he put a hand on Gumong's shoulder. This forbidden area is the first promise we've fulfilled for you. 70,000 tombstones, each with names carved by our own hand, each gravestone personally erected. General Gu, it is our belief that, should we see through the plan that you've made with us, there will come a day when the forbidden area of Warrior Soul Mountain will no longer be off limits. Gumong made no sound. Attired in formal military morning dress, and with white hemp binding his hair, he wept, kowtowing again and again. He saw no living people. His vision was filled only with those deceased and long-gone brothers. The Emperor didn't disturb him. He kept Gumong's silent company as he watched from the side. Eventually, Gumong staggered to his feet. He pressed his palms together, praying a few more times before the graves with his hands to his forehead, mumbling in a low voice. "Is there anything else you want us to do?" the Emperor asked. Gumong closed his eyes. When he spoke, his eyes were damp. "If it's not too bold, I have 3 things I'd like to ask your Imperial Majesty to grant." "Speak." Gumong ran his fingers over the golden text on one of the gravestones, tracing the characters from top to bottom. "For the first, if I'm really unable to return, I ask your Imperial Majesty not to erect a tomb or gravestone for me on Warrior Soul Mountain. When I leave for the Liao Kingdom, I become a spy. I will inevitably stain my hands with the blood of my comrades. Even if I had no choice, even if I had a secret reason, those whose lives I take will still die by my hand. I have no right to be buried with them." The Emperor seemed uneasy, but I ask you to hear me out. For the second request, Shiha Jun's character is pure and kind. He's a noble of great merit, yet he shares a deep friendship with me and has offended countless ancestral patriarchs on my behalf. When I defect, he is bound to disbelieve it. He may even take extremely disobedient and unfilial actions. I ask your Imperial Majesty to keep the truth from him, no matter what. Of course. We're all holding hands. We are holding hands. Blue. Blue, something is deep in that friendship. Yeah. Yeah. I ask your Imperial Majesty to understand his sorrow and refrain from punishing him. Hearing this, Moshi couldn't hold back anymore. Tears poured down his face. He involuntarily stepped forward, eyes fixed on Gumong in the illusion, with his proper military uniform and solemn expression. "Gumong," he murmured. But the illusion of Gumong from 8 years ago couldn't hear him. He stood in the chilly mountain air, his sleeves fluttering. He was not going to meet his death. Rather, he was going beyond death, and right now, he was methodically briefing the Emperor on his last wishes. "The third thing," Gumong began, and then fell silent. He lowered his lashes and looked at his hands. After some time, he whispered, "The third thing, I want to play the soul-calling song for them while my hands are still clean. But, your Imperial Majesty, I only have a paltry little swana. May I borrow your holy weapon?" He raised his head, the crisp wind stirring the hair by his temples. Under the moonlight, he looked imploringly at the Emperor. When Changhua's soul-calling song was performed for martyred heroes, a ceremonial official customarily played it on their holy weapon. Gumong couldn't hope for a ceremonial official to come console his brothers. He could only ask for recognition from this man in front of him. "With your devotion, what would we refuse you?" A jade-green bamboo xiao appeared in the Emperor's hands. He handed the flute to Gumong. Gumong thanked him, taking the xiao reverently with both hands. He raised his chin and gazed forward, as if to carve all of the 70,000 gravestones on Warrior Soul Mountain into his heart. Under the light of the bright moon and the shadows of the pines, he pressed the bamboo xiao to his lips and closed his eyes. "Our sons went forth with swords held brave, their blood and bones in distant grave. Last year this self was yet intact. Last night this body spoke and laughed. Your loyalty I safely keep. Your valiant deeds I freely speak. For when these heroes' souls come home, throughout the land shall peace be known. The song came to an end. When Gumong lowered the xiao, his eyes brimmed with tears. He turned to restore the instrument to the emperor, then knelt once more before the forest of graves. After a few moments of silence, he lowered his head, his voice small. Your Imperial Majesty, I'm leaving soon. I don't know when I'll be back, if ever. Subject Gu. When I'm gone, I ask you to visit them often on my behalf. No need to burn too much gilt paper money. Just bring some jugs of good wine, a few different dishes. By the end, his voice was a tearful whisper. When they were with me, the military rations were never enough. They would look at the rations for the other armies, and often they would joke with me and tell me. He pressed his forehead to the icy stone plaque, tears falling like beads off a broken string. Tell me they were hungry, that they wanted a proper meal. The emperor said nothing. All these years, I heard all of it, even if I never said anything. There were always those who said we wanted to seize power, that we wanted to revolt, called us insatiably greedy, and wildly ambitious. Gumong slowly tilted his head back. But your Imperial Majesty, did you know? Their greatest, wildest ambition was actually just to eat a filling meal. The Emperor and the Illusion wore a mask. No one knew what his expression was on hearing these words. But Moshi could see that, despite how many years had passed, when the present Emperor beside him heard Gumong say this once more, his expression was dull with pain. Come visit them on my behalf, would you? Bring them some more army rations. Subject Gu, rest assured, we will do as you ask. Could there be wine, too? We'll bring the finest wine in Chonghua for your men. Shao Daozi is good enough. They're used to being poor. They wouldn't have the heart to drink expensive wine. Shao Daozi, then. Gumong no longer had any requests. He knelt on the mountain, tilting his head to gaze at the plaques his brothers had become. He didn't move for a long time. The Emperor in the Illusion sighed softly and raised a hand. Yet instead of dispersing the jade bamboo xiao, he pressed it to his own lips and played the soul-calling song again. The notes of the flute echoed under the pale moonlight, carried on the crisp breeze. To the sound of this mournful tune, the surrounds of Warrior Soul Mountain disappeared. The illusory fog and the scene it showed dispersed, but the moving song of the Xiao seemed to pass through the illusion into reality and resonate from the foothills of Warrior Soul Mountain 8 years ago. The mist scattered, yet the notes lingered in echoes. A long moment passed back on Ju Chue Terrace. Eventually, the Emperor replaced that Z bead and gazed up at the pristine moon peeking from the clouds. Fireball, he murmured. I keep forgetting Moshi is Fireball. Fireball, he murmured. These 8 years, we've worn this bracelet at all times, guarding this secret. Whenever we could bear it no longer, we transfigured the section of memory and watched it over again. Every time, we would remember once more that we did not walk this path alone, that we carried the hopes of more than just ourselves. It's been 8 years. Every day and every night, we never forgot. We did not dare to forget. The Emperor caressed the Z beads on his wrist, voice a murmur. We don't have a heart of stone. It's only that sitting on high is like being held in a cage. By the end, his voice was tearful. In all honesty, has there ever been a moment we did not feel shame for our treatment of Subject Gu? And of you? Neither spoke. The birds and the cicadas in the ancient trees by by the pavilion sang in the night. On the terrace of Jutue Hall, Moshi and the Emperor gazed at each other in silence, both grieving, eyes wet. That's the end of the chapter. What the past couple of chapters has been me just like my brain is kind of breaking and rewiring around the Emperor because he's still so slimy and horrible, but like what is going on? Where are these emotions coming from? Um Henry, I keep getting they were gazing at one another. Capri flashbacks. Yeah. Yeah, I've been catching up on Captive Prince and yeah, same. Uh, we only have one more chapter. We're on page 339 for chapter 130, which is called Going Home. Take a drink. Uh-huh. Moshi returned to his manor, where he stayed in seclusion for 3 days. The capital buzzed with curiosity about what had transpired. What had taken place when Moshi went to the palace such that the emperor did not punish his great offense? After everything, he was merely placed under house arrest for a handful of days, and that was the end of it. No one could know the truth. In those 3 days, Jiang Fu Li never once left Shihe Manor. Gu Mong's injuries were too severe. He sent everyone away to treat him. No one was allowed near the patient's room. Is someone going to treat Moshi? Because I think he also needs that. On the 3rd day, sunlight streamed through the window lattice. Time passed, and ink-dark shadows flowed across the floor. Moshi sat at his sandalwood desk, looking at the stack of letters in front of him. He had already flipped through and reread these letters countless times in the past few days. They were the intelligence reports Gumong had sent the emperor from the Liao kingdom during the years he had been gone from Chonghua. The emperor had kept them in the Qiankun pouch he carried on his person all this time. 5 years' worth of reports, a thick stack. The earliest letters were smudged and faded, and even the latest had begun to yellow at the edges. The only thing that hadn't changed was the handwriting. Moshi couldn't be more familiar with those characters. The penmanship was slightly slanted and messy, the ends of certain strokes distinctively curled. Your Imperial Majesty, I've entered the Liao Kingdom. The Guoshi of Liao was very wary and caused some slight difficulty. Everything has been settled. No need to worry. Wishing your Imperial Majesty well. And another. Your Imperial Majesty, Liao plans to attack Lan City at the northern frontier after the fall harvest. There are many civilians in Lan City. I ask your Imperial Majesty to have sympathy for the people and prepare in advance. And another. Your Imperial Majesty, I am stationed with the Liao Kingdom army at Mount Tiandang. As a general of Liao, I cannot avoid killing on the battlefield. In 7 days, in the attack on Lan City, I will have no choice but to face my comrades, the soldiers of Chonghua. For this, I beg forgiveness on my knees. There was even the missive Gumong sent to the emperor after the battle of Dongting Lake. The handwriting on that note was messier than on any previous letter. The brush strokes seemed to shake, as if Gumong was so distraught while writing he couldn't calm down to pen each stroke properly. The anxiety he felt was palpable in the form of the words themselves. Oh, we're holding hands again. I had no choice but to stab him in the heart. General Mo is far too naive and stubborn. I sincerely hope your Imperial Majesty will take attentive care of him. I have one more request. General Mo and I share a deep brotherhood, and I'm afraid I can never again face General Mo in battle. Every time Moshi read to this point, he couldn't help but imagine how Gumong must have felt writing this letter. And every time, it hurt too much. Once he thought it, he couldn't console himself. Other than updates on the Liao Kingdom's military and reports of their black magic techniques, what Moshi saw most as he flipped through the letters were Gumong's accounts after each battle, of how many people he killed and how many cities he destroyed. These were not so much apologies to the Emperor as Gumong's ledger of the lives he owed. By the 5th year, Gumong had stopped counting, probably because he too had realized, however he calculated or counted, those people were dead by his own hand. There was nothing to salvage. Instead, at the end of every letter, where one would usually sign their name, he would write a line in very small print. The guilty subject Gumong kowtows once and once again. Moshi stroked the words curled up in the corner. The guilty subject Gumong. His tears fell just like that, dripping onto those shameful and guilt-ridden words. He flipped to the last letter. In this final missive, Gumong wrote a few simple lines of text explaining the reason the Emperor must use him for black magic experiments. Of course. So Gumong insisted that. That was Gumong's idea. When I first entered the Liao Kingdom 5 years ago, Liao tempered my body, injected wolf blood into my veins, and carved black magic spells into my bones. Throughout these 5 years, my mind has gradually become chaotic, more and more difficult for me to control. I can guess what the Liao Kingdom will do next. Very soon, they will break my mind and destroy my memories, then send me back as a peace offering to Chonghua. My life is insignificant and is already soaked in filthy blood. Your Imperial Majesty need not trouble yourself to treat me. If your Imperial Majesty truly pities the suffering I have endured, I ask you to have me sent to the prison to be dissected and experimented on, so that methods to counter the Liao Kingdom's black magic path can be found more quickly. With this, my remaining wishes shall be fulfilled. At the end of the letter, there was once again that line of small and shameful characters. The guilty subject Gumong kowtows once and once again. The Emperor's last words from Zhu Cue Hall still echoed in his ears. Fireball, do you know how he felt upon seeing this letter? In the first missive he sent 5 years ago, he told us the Liao Kingdom had some slight difficulty with him, but everything had been dealt with, and there was no need to worry. It wasn't until 5 years later, when he realized that the Liao Kingdom would likely dispose of him next, that he revealed the truth. The slight difficulty he spoke of referred to the tempering of his body and the carving of his bones with black magic runes. Do you understand now? The Liao Kingdom sent him back because the demonic curse and monstrous blood in Gumong's body could no longer be controlled. Even they didn't know what he would become with his mind fully consumed by black magic. Nor did they dare to carelessly kill this mutated demonic body, so they sent him back to Chonghua. Yeah, I can't get over the Emperor using the name Fireball, like a pet name. The Emperor paused then, and repeated himself. Fireball, we had no choice. The black magic trials are cruel, yet this was the only method we could think of to save him. Otherwise, when the day comes that the demonic energy in Gumong's body explodes, both Chonghua and Gumong will be destroyed. A sharp knock sounded from the half-closed door. Moshi swiftly came to his senses, surfacing from those wretched memories. He wiped away the tear tracks that had not yet dried and tidied up the letters. Enter. Li Wei took a few steps inside. In the past few days, he was the only person who could enter this room without being kicked out. My lord, good news. He's been saved, he exclaimed. Moshi started, jolting to his feet, as if he might run out the door. He's still sleeping, Li Wei hastily added. Medicine Master Zhang instructed that he absolutely mustn't be woken up. The Medicine Master is waiting for you in the back courtyard. He says there is something he must speak to you about. Is it about giving Moshi treatment, too? Zhang Fuli was leaning against a pillar beside the lotus pond in the back courtyard of Shihe Manor. He gazed at the pool full of flourishing, fragrant lotus blossoms, his eyes glimmering with an inscrutable light. Whatever he was pondering seemed to have left him perplexed. His brows were drawn together tightly, his thin lips tightly pursed in thought. Moshi strode down the winding corridor and arrived at his side. Medicine Master Zhang. Perhaps he was depleted from 3 days of healing, or perhaps it was for some other reason that Zhang Fuli showed a rare unresponsiveness. He continued to stare blankly at the fish swimming in the pool. Medicine Master Zhang. Only upon Moshi's second greeting did Zhang Fuli react as if waking from a dream. Oh, it's you. You're here. Moshi was thinking of nothing but Gumang. He took no notice of Zhang Fuli's strange demeanor. How is my Shixiong? There were some slight complications, but you don't need to worry, Zhang Fuli replied. Sit down. I'll tell you. Moshi was restless, but Zhang Fuli's attitude seemed to say, I won't talk unless you sit. He had no other choice. He took a seat across from Zhang Fuli. Let me first ask you. Before Zhou He began the black magic experiments, had Gumang already recovered a majority of his memories? He was very straightforward, and so Moshi made no attempt to deny it. I don't concern myself with the machinations of the court. I won't ask anything more. You can be at ease. I'm only curious. He lost 2 souls, so it should be impossible for his memories to recover to such an extent. What did you experience on Bat Island? What was it that put him into the state? The time mirror, Moshi answered. Zhang Fuli was silent for a beat. No wonder. Now I understand. I'll explain it this way, Shihe Jun. The time mirror can indeed return Gumang's mind and memories, but human souls cannot be replaced. What the time mirror did was only a flashback, and not a true recovery. A flashback. Correct, Zhang Fuli said. It's like a flash of dying lucidity. It doesn't last long. In another month or 2, the memories returned by the time mirror will disappear. He paused before continuing. My apologies. Even I have no way of reversing this. In truth, Moshi had more or less expected this. When the Shangao had called the... I cannot speak now. Moshi had expected this. I'm sorry. I'm just like... You weren't going to tell us that? Okay. In truth, Moshi had more or less expected this. When the Shangao had called the time mirror, he had shouted something about flashing back Gumang's memories. Even back then, Moshi had been alarmed by the Shangao's choice of words, but when he heard this confirmation from Zhang Fuli, his heart still plummeted. He cast his gaze downward. I understand. Many thanks, he said in a low voice. I'm paid to help with such problems. There's no need for thanks. Gumang's other injuries won't cause him further trouble. All he needs now is sufficient rest and care. However, there's something I must remind you of. Zhang Fuli's expression became solemn. His mind absolutely cannot endure another major shock. Moshi's heart seized. He asked, urgent, he's still unwell? How could he not be? Zhang Fuli held up 3 fingers before Moshi. First, he lacks 2 souls. Second, An ancient godly mirror forcibly returned some of his memories. Third, Zhou He cut into his brain. He curled a finger with every item he mentioned. Let me put it like this, Shihajun. This Gushishang of yours is extraordinarily strong. If it were anyone else, they would have gone mad from any one of those three. By the time all three fingers were down, even someone as arrogant as Jiang Fuli couldn't help a sigh of admiration. He went through all that, yet he still didn't lose his sense of self. A breeze blew over the lotus pool, scudding across the shimmering water. Jiang Fuli turned to gaze at the ripples, speaking softly. In truth, as a healer, I'm very curious. I can't imagine what kind of mental willpower he must possess to make him so indestructible. Both men were still for a moment. Jiang Fuli's almond eyes watched the fish in the pond circle each other and disperse. Suddenly, he asked, Shihajun, I have a question for you. Gumong was sent to the Liao Kingdom as a spy, wasn't he? Looking up, Moshi stared at him. Jiang Fuli had used up 3 days of sheer effort. He was deeply weary, leaning against the pillar for support. He turned his head and squinted at the rippling lotus pool. Don't worry, I didn't peek at his thoughts while healing him, he said in a leisurely tone. Considering his mental fortitude, he might not tell me the truth even if I fed him the draught of confession. It's just a personal hunch, no more than an offhand question. You don't have to confirm either way. Moshi's throat hurt terribly. After a spell, he said, Why would you think so? It's very simple, Jiang Fuli replied. A traitor who fell onto a path of vengeful murder merely because he couldn't bear disappointment would not have the kind of willpower he does. I have no evidence, nor do I wish to involve myself in the intrigues of the court, but as a healer, I am certain he isn't a cruel person. Sunlight filled Jiang Fuli's eyes, smoothing those features that were usually so obstinate and unimpressed by the world. In this light, he looked somewhat melancholy, even gentle. Moshi was struck by a faint sense of déjà vu. Take good care of him, Shihajun. The state of his mind is perilous, like a cracking sheet of ice, if he should endure a fourth trauma to the mind. Jiang Fuli paused, tone grave. He will go mad. At that point, unless you find his 2 souls, even an immortal from the highest of heavens couldn't save him. In the evening, a crescent moon hung overhead. The canopy of heaven was lustrous with stars, and Milky Way looked like a soaring dragon, or like a bright sword glimmering with light as it flowed across the deep blue of the sky. On this night, many in Chonghua found their minds heavy with the weight of their own difficulties. In the imperial palace, the emperor laid curled within the soft bed canopies of Juchui Hall, wrapped in fox fur. His eyes were closed as he caressed the Bodhi Zi bead bracelet at his wrist. In Yue Manor, Murong Chuyi's feet took him to the door of Yue Chunqing's bedroom. After hesitating a long time, he finally lifted a hand and rapped on the wood. He waited without response, then gently pushed the door open. Within, a singular lamp was lit. Both the bed and the desk were neat, and Yue Chunqing was nowhere to be found. A servant walking past told him Yue Chunqing had gone to the academy to study with Zhang Yexue. Murong Chuyi did not respond. After a long while, he closed his eyes. In Medicine Master Manor, Jiang Fuli had announced he must set out on a long journey and was urgently packing his bags. His wife stood by the door as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she never spoke. In Wangshu Manor, Murong Lian lay on the bamboo bed in his courtyard, taking long drags of ephemera. Clouds of smoke slowly drifted from his lips and were blown toward the blossoming foxglove trees. Biting his pipe, Muronglian stretched his hand in front of him and stared vacantly at his own fingers, his gaze flickering. As for Shiha Manor, after so many twists and turns and bloody storms, the inhabitants of this manor finally returned to a temporary peace. Gumong lay on the spacious bed in the master bedroom, covered with a light blanket, slumbering still. Moshi had dismissed the servants, keeping a solitary vigil at his bedside. He sat patiently, unbothered by Gumong's long sleep, or the fact that Gumong had taken his bed. After all, he'd once sworn to give Gumong those things. I promised to give you a home. Moshi took hold of his hand, bringing it to his lips and kissing it gently. I'm sorry, Shixiong. I've made you wait too long. The man on the bed lay obediently, his thick sweep of lashes fanning across his cheeks. He no longer had any need to pretend, endure, or exhaust himself. He looked so weary, so weak. As Moshi gazed at the man before him, he could scarcely recall how his Gumong Goga used to look. Healthy, sturdy, resplendent with sunlight. Time had ravaged him terribly. Moshi lowered his head, burying his face in his hands and pressing his forehead to Gumong's slightly cool palm. Quietly, he choked out, Shixiong, you're home now. Warm tears streamed down his cheeks, soaking Gumong's hand. As if awakened by that murmur and the passion it entailed, after a few moments, Gumong's fingertips twitched. Slowly, he opened his eyes. That's the end. That's the end. That's the end of this book. Yep. Blue, yeah, I agree with you. I like where they decided to end this volume too. It does. It feels like a proper, like, book. Like a volume where it's meant to go together instead of just being cut up in random places. Yeah. Okay, wow. So, volume 4 is over. So we've read 4 volumes of this. We just have 5, 6, and 7. And I think they're all shorter than this, maybe. It looks like it, at least. Yeah, just 3 volumes left, Rumi. Yeah, and I'm glad this didn't end on, like, a cliffhanger. It's just a good place to end. I still have so many questions about so many things. Oh, do I want to look at chapter 131's name in volume 5? Yeah. Okay. I think volume 5 is the shortest one. It looks incredibly short. Let's look at the cover. The cover is so pretty, and I'm very curious about this volume, because that's Murong Lian smoking ephemera, and then everybody's up here in his smoke. Not ominous at all. The name of Okay, the name of chapter 131 is I Love You. Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. I'm putting my bookmark right there. Thank you, Blue. Thank you for telling me to do that. Well, that's early. I hope Meat Bun is not messing with us with that that chapter title. I'm excited. Yeah, some good cheering up. So we will get that cheering up hopefully next week. On Monday, I will see y'all again to start volume 5. Um, yeah. You know, in Discord, um, I set up the channel for this book to be similar to how um the like fans of Britney's streams had set up the channel where it's like for theories. So it's supposed to be Yu theories, but it's kind of hard to have theories in this book series, I feel like. Like occasionally I look at something and I'm like, that's suspicious. And I have some vague idea that like something weird is going on with some character, but I never can like get to the point of actually articulating a theory. Like I think so and so is doing X, Y, and Z. I just don't know. I don't know if I'm like, have any of y'all had a theory that came true? I guess I saw some people saying that they knew that the Emperor was the one in the black cloak. That one I did not catch. But like, have any of y'all had any other like thoughts where you turn out to be true or like false? Like I don't know. I'm very curious because Rumi, you called it about the Emperor and the cloak, yeah. Um Also, can we talk about Zhang Yeshui and Murong Chuyi, or are we like not allowed to talk about that? um Obviously I don't want anything spoilery from people who have read it already. But like I noticed when I was reading that part, um no one was like saying anything, and I was just kind of like and not like I don't know. I just I felt like I don't know. Yeah, Rumi, that's what I think too. I was just like I was like, "Oh, nobody's saying anything." And I don't know what that means. So like if it's a spoiler, don't tell me what it means, but I was just like, "Hmm, okay." Um they're like they're actually I don't know what they would be called in the way that they're sort of related, but Murong Chuyi was adopted, but also they're like not. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know what that's called. Okay, yeah. Yeah, Blue. Thank you for not saying anything since you read ahead. Yeah, they're not related by blood, and I also don't even know what you would call their familial relation, even if Murong Chuyi had not been adopted. Like I literally Googled. I was like, so what do you call? I don't know. It's just a little bit convoluted. um, Wait, who? What did Nina say? I missed what Nina said. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Wait, yeah, I'm looking at the wrong place. It's okay. I've stopped being able to read. Sorry, that was you, Nina. You read ahead and you can't tell me things. Um, yeah. See, I knew Zhang Yeshui had a secret that that the Gaoshan pig the pig daddy like ate his secret. So I was like, he has a juicy secret, but at that point I had no idea what it could be. Yeah, so that was volume 4. I feel like I know that time has passed, like months have gone by, but I don't really feel like I've been doing the streams for that long. So I'm just like, wow, we finished volume 4 already. Okay. But I'm really excited for next week, getting into volume 5. I've got to head out now. But yeah, yeah, Nina, it was a ride. Um, and Yeah, I will see you on Monday, and I hope you have a very good rest of your week. Bye.